I have a very interesting question to ask, at least I consider it interesting, is how can cells that have the same DNA, like for example, all my body cells have the same DNA, how can cells that have the same DNA be so different from each other? For example, a skin cell is pretty different from let's say, a muscle cell or a blood cell, a white blood cell. A photoreceptor in my eye is a nerve cell is again quite different from a cell in one of my glands which produces hormones. But they all have the same DNA. Of course they have to have the same DNA because like you as well, we were all once a zygote, a fertilized egg cell. Over the course of many years, basically we grew up to become adult organisms made of many trillion cells, but originally all these cells come from one cell here at the beginning. So we have one cell type over here. Over here, we are now made of many different cell types. So we have muscle cells, nerve cells, blood, and so on. And I would like to know, but they have all the same DNA. So how is this possible? It seems to be like a little bit like a contradiction to me. Same DNA, still different cells. How does this work? Well, this process is called cell differentiation. And this is the process in which cells specialize. So over here we have a relatively general stem cell, the zygote, which is the fertilized egg cell. And as it divides, the cells become more and more specialized. And this is called cell differentiation. And how does this work? And that's basically the answer to my paradox. Cell differentiation occurs by controlling which parts of the DNA are used. So over here is, even though all of my cells have the same DNA, not every cell uses all of the DNA. So my skin cells, for example, do not need the DNA to know how to digest, food. Because that's a task that the skin cells are not worried about. Therefore, this DNA is simply switched off. It carries it, but it's not used. And so that is basically the idea. In the process of cell differentiation, different parts of the DNA are simply, it's a complicated chemical process, but are simply switched off. And the differentiated cells, these are the specialized cells over here, have the same DNA as the stem cells, but they don't use all of the same DNA, because those parts that are used are activated and those parts that are not used are switched off, are inactivated. So, and that's basically the concept of cell differentiation. Over here, I'd like to give you a few examples. Here, these are blood cells, red blood cells over here. Osseous tissue, that's the bone, a cross-section through a bone. Cartilage cells over here, connective tissue, which holds other tissues and organs together. Adipose tissue, they are able to store fat. Then over here we have fibrous connective tissue, is very tough, and you can see the fibers over here. All made of cells, but I think you already see from the pictures over here that they look pretty different. But you know what? They have all the same DNA. So what is a tissue? A tissue are cells of the same type that perform a particular function. That's the definition of a tissue. And if you have many different tissues together, then you basically get an organ. And how can cells differ? Cells can differ in their size, of course. They can differ in their shape. They can be different in their function, what they do. Where they're located in the body, of course. The substances that they produce is different or can be different. Some cells can divide better than others. Some cells cannot divide anymore at all. Also, especially with stem cells, they differ in the other cell types that they're able to form. There are certain cells in your body which are only able to form other blood cells. So, and there are cells which can only form skin cells. So that's also an important difference. And that is basically all controlled by the different types of DNA which is expressed or which is used by the cell. Again, the differences here are because different cells switch off different parts of their DNA and they use other parts. And this is the explanation why the cells, even though they have the same DNA, look so different from each other and are able to do different things. So this was a short introduction into cell differentiation.